Tulsi Gabbard walked into that room alone and exposed a rigged system so blatantly corrupt, even Democrats flinched. She named names. She showed the money. What happened next shocked everyone. If you are ready to see how one voice shook the powerful, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know. Where in the world are you watching this from? This is not a hearing. It is a cover-up disguised as accountability. Tulsi Gabbard's voice cut through the tension like a knife. The Oversight Committee room, packed wall to wall with lawmakers, aides, and reporters, fell into a heavy silence. Cameras rolled. Pens hovered. The air was thick with quiet anticipation, like everyone knew something was about to explode. She sat at the witness table, her posture calm, hands folded neatly in front of her. A small glass of water rested untouched beside a slim folder. Her eyes scanned the room, pausing for just a moment on the row of Democratic lawmakers seated directly across from her. She had been invited here under the claim of transparency. But this was not transparency. This was theater. Representative Adam Schiff leaned forward, his expression already tightened with irritation. He cleared his throat, then began. Miss Gabbard, you have become a familiar face in circles that regularly promote right-wing misinformation. So I will ask plainly, are you here to inform or to inflame? A few members shifted in their seats. Some smirked. Others waited. Tulsi did not react right away. She stared back at him, unmoved. Not angry, not defensive, just still. The room tensed, subtle but sharp. Everyone felt it, like the quiet hum before a microphone screeches. This was not about a question. It was a warning. She knew the game. She had seen it before. She had sat in this same chamber as a lawmaker herself, watching hearings turn into ambushes dressed as procedure. But she did not flinch then, and she would not flinch now. Instead, she leaned forward just a little, her voice steady, her words slow and clear. If you are afraid of what I might say, then perhaps it is not me you should be worried about. Tulsi Gabbard did not blink. She did not fumble for words or raise her voice. She simply leaned back, let the silence breathe, then calmly adjusted the microphone in front of her. I am not here to play politics, she said, her tone steady. I am here to expose a pattern. A few heads turned. Others stiffened. On the Democratic side of the chamber, eyes narrowed. Pens started moving faster in the press section. You accuse me of spreading misinformation, she continued, but let us talk about the facts. Let us talk about where the money actually goes. She opened a folder in front of her with slow, precise movement. Her fingers stopped on a highlighted line. $18 million, she said, glancing up, was quietly funneled to nonprofit partners over the last fiscal year. And those nonprofits? They just happened to employ former DNC consultants, campaign strategists, and even family members of sitting members of Congress. A murmur moved through the room, like a ripple in water. One aide whispered into another's ear. A few lawmakers looked down at their notes, suddenly uncomfortable. Tulsi held their gaze. You claim to stand for transparency, she said. But when money flows through back doors into friendly pockets, no one blinks. No press conference. No moral outrage. Just silence. She let the moment hang. Not to gloat, to let it sink in. This is not about party lines, she added. This is about power. Protected. Hidden. Passed quietly from office to office under the cover of good intentions. The tension grew sharper. Schiff shuffled his papers, but said nothing. Tulsi leaned in slightly. If telling the truth puts me in this seat, she said, then maybe you should ask what keeps the liars in yours. Silence. Real full silence. And for a split second, it was not Gabbard who looked like the outsider. It was everyone else. Tulsi Gabbard sat upright, her voice calm, but her words carried weight. There seems to be one set of rules for people in power and a very different one for anyone who questions them. No one interrupted. Not yet. She glanced down at her notes, then looked directly at the committee. Whistleblowers are supposed to be protected, she said. But that only seems to matter when they are useful to your narrative. If they speak out against Republican actions, they are heroes. If they expose corruption linked to your party, they are discredited, silenced, or even labeled as threats. She paused, giving them time to feel the truth behind the words. Take the Hunter Biden laptop story. she continued. It was dismissed as fake news by the same people now admitting it was real. Social media platforms were pushed to block it. Algorithms were adjusted. Accounts were frozen. All because the truth came too close to power. A few committee members shifted in their seats. One chuckled under his breath, trying to hide discomfort behind sarcasm. Tulsi turned her head slightly, voice unshaken. Truth is not dangerous, she said, unless it threatens your donors. A low murmur spread through the chamber. Reporters leaned forward, camera shutters, clicking softly. She tapped her folder once, slow and firm. Some of you act like protecting democracy means hiding its flaws. But real democracy only works when people are trusted with the truth, especially the truth that makes the powerful uncomfortable. Another pause. The press gallery was buzzing now. Typing, whispering, watching. Tulsi closed her folder, then met the gaze of every person seated across from her. If we are only allowed to speak freely when it is convenient for you, then freedom does not exist. It is only permission. Stillness followed. Heavy. Tense. If this moment has you questioning everything too, pause for a second, like the video, subscribe to stay sharp, and drop a comment with what hit you the hardest so far. And no one laughed this time. Tulsi Gabbard let the silence settle before speaking again. This time, her tone shifted, still calm, still steady, but now with something colder underneath. Let us follow the money, she said, because it always tells the truth. She opened a different folder, flipping past the first few pages, landing on a thick stack of highlighted numbers. Billions of taxpayer dollars leave this country every single year under the label of foreign aid. Much of it goes to nonprofit organizations overseas. But when you follow the trail, it loops right back into the pockets of people here. People who sit on advisory boards, write policy memos, and just happen to be former members of Congress or top party donors. She paused, lifting one sheet slightly off the pile. $120 million, she said slowly, was allocated to gender studies programs in Pakistan. That money passed through at least 4 organizations before touching the ground. Meanwhile, American veterans sleep on sidewalks a few blocks from this building. She did not raise her voice, but the weight of the comparison landed hard. You say this is about compassion, but real compassion starts at home. It starts with the people who built this country, not with contracts written in back rooms, pushed through under the cover of global aid. Some lawmakers whispered, others stayed frozen. Tulsi leaned in just slightly. You know what I find interesting? She asked. Helping Americans has never been profitable. But help foreign contractors, global consultants, or overseas NGOs, and suddenly, there's a line out the door. If helping people here paid like those contracts do, maybe you would finally care. A reporter dropped his pen. The sound echoed. Tulsi continued. This is not about aid. It is about access. It is about moving money around until no one remembers where it started. And every time someone asks why our people are still struggling, you change the subject. She tapped the folder once more. People are not asking for handouts. They are asking for honesty. And right now, Washington cannot even give them that. The room stayed silent, and Tulsi did not blink. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez slammed her hand on the table, her voice sharp and rising. This is not testimony. This is a mouthpiece for disinformation, dressed up as facts. Gasps rippled through the room. A few lawmakers nodded. Others looked toward the chair, unsure if someone was about to step in. Tulsi Gabbard stayed completely still. She did not speak right away. She waited, letting the weight of the outburst settle into the room. Then, she leaned forward, her tone quiet but clear. When facts fail, you raise your voice, she said. When you are guilty, you change the subject. The silence broke all at once. Several voices started talking over each other. One lawmaker from the left shouted something about public trust. Another accused Tulsi of repeating talking points meant to divide. A third demanded her time be cut short. The chair pounded the gavel, calling for order, but no one was listening. Tulsi remained calm. She did not react to the shouting. She did not match their tone. She sat, watching, waiting, as the chaos unfolded around her. Reporters in the gallery leaned forward, scribbling notes, cameras flashing. This was the moment they had been waiting for. One of the staffers behind the committee visibly winced as another member raised their voice again, trying to outdo the last one. Tulsi adjusted the microphone slightly. "I understand why this is uncomfortable," she said, her voice calm, almost steady enough to seem bored. "It is hard to defend a system that you helped build, especially when that system starts to show cracks." The chair shouted for silence again. Slowly, the noise began to fade, but the damage was already done. Tulsi had not just held her ground. She had taken it, and everyone in that room knew it. Tulsi Gabbard leaned back in her chair. Her tone shifted, not softer, but sharper. Less like an argument, more like a mirror being held up. "I want to ask a simple question," she said, pausing. "Why does the government fear oversight from the very people it is supposed to serve?" The room stayed quiet. "You call it a conspiracy," she continued, "when everyday Americans ask questions. But when you hide answers behind closed doors, you call it national security." She looked around slowly, letting her eyes move from one lawmaker to the next. "If there is nothing to hide, why is there so much effort spent hiding it?" No one responded. She turned slightly, shifting her focus to the cameras lining the back wall of the room. "I want to speak directly to the people watching at home," she said. "The workers, the parents, the students, the veterans, the ones being told that asking questions makes you dangerous." She paused again, her voice low but clear. "You are not crazy. They really are gaslighting you." A few members of the committee shifted uncomfortably. Tulsi kept going. "You are told to trust the system, but that same system shields itself from the very people funding it. When you ask where your money goes, they change the subject. When you question their decisions, they question your sanity." She let that sit for a beat. "They do not fear misinformation," she said. "They fear accountability. They fear truth that does not pass through their filter first." Her eyes returned to the lawmakers across from her. "And if telling the truth makes someone a threat, then maybe the threat is not the person. Maybe it is the truth itself." She folded her hands, and no one had a word to say back. The room had gone completely still. The shouting, the crosstalk, the interruptions gone. What remained was silence, heavy and cold. Tulsi Gabbard flipped to the final page in her folder. She lifted it carefully, holding it up just enough for the cameras to catch a glimpse. "This," she said, "is a list of payouts made through federal contracts, each one linked to a family member of a current or former elected official." She placed the sheet down, tapping her finger once. "Names, companies, dollar amounts. Not rumors, not theories, just records." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A few lawmakers exchanged quick glances. One of them stood up, whispering to an aide before storming out. Another followed, face flushed, avoiding eye contact with the press. Tulsi did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "This is not about left or right," she said slowly. "It is about the ruling class protecting itself while pretending to fight in your name." Reporters looked stunned. Pens were down. Cameras stayed locked on her face. She pushed the folder aside and leaned forward. "If telling the truth makes me dangerous," she said, "then maybe it is time you asked why lies feel so safe." No one moved. No one spoke. And Tulsi Gabbard just sat there, calm, steady, finished, because the words were not just a statement. They were a verdict. And the silence, that was the sound of the mask finally breaking. If this story made you feel something, leave a like, subscribe for more truth they do not want you to hear, and tell us, who in your life always spoke the truth, no matter the cost?